Hey everyone, this is Alex, and this video I'm going to be talking about what my optimal filters are on the EV tool. I think it's very important that you kind of cater your filters and your preset filters to kind of how your workflow works and how you like to get on and place your wagers because it's going to be a little bit different for everyone depending on where you live, what books you have access to, what books you want to devig to, etc., what kind of wagers you want to place. So that kind of all goes into it, but I'm just going to kind of show you what I do, and then maybe you could take a thing or two from that to help cater it towards your needs. Okay, so arguably the most important thing are your sharp books and the weights that you give them. So what these sharp books do are they're your books that you devig to. So whatever books you have selected in here, when you click on a play, some of them are going to pop up over here. And that is where you're getting your fair line value from. So it's taking each fair value because each book has their own fair value. So based on these numbers, right, you'd say Pinnacle fair value is around for the under, so this side would be around plus 126, 127. And then Bookmakers is around plus 118 to plus 120 ish around there. And then depending on those individual fair values and based on your book weights, which is how much weight you give to each sharp book, that's where it gets that fair value calculation from. So here are my sharp books. So there's a little more nuance to it, but first of all, I'm just going to say Pinnacle, you always want to have 100%. And same with FanDuel for player props, and I'll get more into that later. Then the next two I trust the most are ProfitX and Novig. And then I add Bookmaker, Circa, and Sport Trade. I add those in as, less weight. So the books you trust more, you want to give more weight to. And those are the books that are going to carry more weight in the fair value calculation. So the reason I said this is a little bit more nuanced is I have different filters and settings for when I'm betting on main lines versus player props. So, for example, when I log on to bet, let's say the first thing I want to do is bet on player props. So I have my preset filters with my sharp books, and then sports books here is just all of the books that you have access to, right? Leagues, you could just clear whatever league you want. I put max odds to 300, and then the devig mode I put to additive. You can kind of, if especially if you're lacking value, these just change your EV percentage or what it's calculating the fair value as. So if the value is a little bit light, I'll filter through these and see if anything else pops up. But I like additive. It kind of the other ones give a little bit too much credit to the underdog, and I think that the underdog deserves more credit than maybe like worst. But yeah, I think personally I use additive, and then I showed you my sharp book weights. But then let's say I'm doing player props, so click player here, and then I'm gonna take out Pinnacle because I don't think that their player props are sharp at all. They're usually low liquidity anyway. So I just take those out. And then FanDuel is going to be my best book to devig to for player props. So they're going to have the most weight. And I've had a lot of success devigging to player props for prop builder, for DFS books like Pick Six or Prize Picks or anything like that. And just, taking whatever limits I'll get on DraftKings on these player props, I've had success too. Okay, so now if I was going to bet on some main lines, I'd click main and alternative. And then I'm going to go in here and take out FanDuel because I personally like to bet on FanDuel's main line. I kind of cut out betting on their player props. I've had an up and down relationship with FanDuel, and ever since I completely cut out betting on all player props, I'm sure you could find value, and I've found value on their player props before, but I've found the most consistent results by only betting on main lines on FanDuel. So I don't devig to them. I'd rather bet on them. So now when I bet on here, you're not going to see FanDuel as a devig book. You're going to see Pinnacle as the highest weight, and then all my other ones. So that's a very general, just kind of practice that I use for player props and main lines. But what's also nice is you could just save those. So what I actually have is, all different save filters. So I have a live filter. I have different states that I travel to. I live in Connecticut. Sometimes I go to New York. And so this one also has BetMGM and ESPN Bet and Bet Rivers and Caesars, right? So it's easy when you want to change around your filters to just have them all preset. It just makes everything quicker. But look, actually have FanDuel as its own filter. So the only sportsbook in here is FanDuel. I'm obviously not devigging to it, but I'm devigging to all the other books that I showed you before, including Pinnacle, obviously. Um, And then, yeah, already filtered out the player props because I won't be betting on those. And then it's just easy for me throughout the day when I do my 10-minute check in to see what the value is. It's easy to just click on this FanDuel one and get my bets out for FanDuel. And then, I go over to the player prop ones and I get my bets in on, Fliff and DraftKings and Prop Builder. And then I go to the main lines and I get my bets in on whatever. So it's just kind of makes your whole workflow a little bit easier. And once you get the hang of it, then you're really going to be a lot quicker with your bets. And that's kind of the goal. So for live betting, I'm sure people are going to ask to see my live betting filters. So it's not really anything new. I just put in the live books that I want to bet on. Again, I keep max odds at 300, devig mode to additive. And then I keep in FanDuel and Pinnacle in the sharp books. See what kind of value there is. If it's mostly main lines, then I'll take out FanDuel for a second, bet on the main lines. If there's a lot of player prop value, I'll take out Pinnacle and bet on the FanDuel or devigging to FanDuel, bet on player props. And I like to keep the minimum EV for live at 5% just because there's so much value live usually that I don't, and you have to be quick. So you don't have time to really look at everything. So knowing that every play that pops up is going to be at least 5% EV is a lot easier for me to make my bet decision because the whole point of live betting or the whole way to be good at live betting is being able to make that bet decision as quickly as possible. So knowing that it's going to be at least 5% to my preferred DVIG books is just something less that I have to look at and it makes it easier for me to get the bet down. One other thing to note is a lot of new sports books, just in general, like for example, I don't know if anyone's heard of Onyx Odds. So they are a sweepstakes sports book, kind of like Fliff, but they basically just mirror DraftKings odds. So not that you would ever do this, but if I wanted to place bets on Onyx, I wouldn't. Again, you would never devig to DraftKings because they're not a sharp book. But if I was trying to bet on Onyx and I devig to DraftKings, it's going to say that there's no value anywhere, right? Because it's telling you what the value is based off of DraftKings odds. And if they're the same, you're not going to find any value. So another one I found recently was, and I've been using a lot, is Bet 105. But if you devig to Pinnacle with Bet 105, you're not going to see as much value because like so on this tool when I devig to Pinnacle, or have Pinnacle as one of the DVIG books, it's only going to show me lines that Pinnacle doesn't even have, or it's not picking up, right? Because if this was DVIGing to Pinnacle as well, and Pinnacle had the highest weight, and they had the same odds, then it's not going to say there's any value. So again, when I'm betting on Bet 105, I'll usually remove Pinnacle, and mostly for these, I like to do almost all of the player props have good value. That's kind of why I stopped devigging to to Pinnacle because Bet 105 mirrors their odds and there's been tons and tons of player prop values. So that kind of lowered my confidence in the Pinnacle player props, but I've also found some good value on like alternative, main lines. Like, there's value right here. But yeah, so that's just another thing I kind of picked up on. But if you do notice things like that, like I always notice that this Prime Sports is always the same as Bookmaker. So you'll kind of see that soft books kind of sometimes mirror one of the sharp books. I don't really know anything about Prime Sports if it's sharp or not, but every time I click on a bet and it has Bookmaker, it also has Prime Sports and they have the same odds. So if I was trying to bet on Prime, I wouldn't devig to Bookmaker. So that's just kind of one thing to look out for. A lot of these new sports books, instead of setting their own lines, it's easier for them to just pull from a sharper book. So that's just one thing to look for if you're trying to bet on one of these books. Because if I were to look up Prime Sports and I'm devigging a bit to Bookmaker, it's not going to show me any value. As for the other tools, I don't really have any like crazy filters on. The ARB tool, I just put in every book that I have and just try to spot discrepancies. Smart Money tool, same thing. I just put in all the books I have. Sometimes I'll filter on like a certain, like if there's an NFL game on tonight or something, I'll, do this and look for an NFL game, but no crazy filters there either. And for the fantasy tool, it doesn't even allow you to choose your own DVIG book. But when you're looking, in your head, I would still value FanDuel the most here. I wouldn't really look at Pinnacle that much, but I'd say FanDuel first and then probably the exchanges, so Novig and ProfitX. Then I do like Bookmaker, and then Pinnacle's not the worst as like a fifth option. That's pretty much all I got. I just wanted to give you guys an update on what my filters are looking like in the EV tool currently. I've changed them up recently and it's been working well. So I thought I would share them. My goal recently has been to kind of limit the amount of time I'm wasting kind of betting a day. I want to tighten everything up. Doesn't mean I'm betting less. It's just I want to not spend as much time doing it and still kind of make the same amount of money. So setting up these optimal filters just to quickly check in and do, 10, 15-minute little chunks throughout the day has been working for me very well. So, yeah, this has just made my life easier. So I thought I would share. But if anyone has any other questions, you could DM me on X. Here's my handle at Keep On Betting. Um, Most likely to reply with a DM on here. But yeah, again, any questions, let me know. Toss me a follow if you want. But yeah, thanks all for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.